Hello, I'm Glenda Keel, and I'm the chairperson for the League of Women. Actually, we're calling League Luncheons now. And today's the first League Lunch program in 2022. And we look forward to being able to meet in person soon, but we feel we're glad that we can present you today's program virtually. There will be an opportunity for questions at the conclusion of our speakers' remarks. And to submit a question, just type it in anytime during the presentation. And at the conclusion of his remarks, I'll read the question and the speaker will answer them, and we'll do as many as we have time for. The featured organization today is the Outer Banks Community Foundation, and our speaker is the new president and CEO, Chris Sawin. Chris is a local guy. He grew up here. His family moved here permanently when he was in 5th grade. So all of his secondary education was here on the Outer Banks. And we bankers are proud of his academic achievements. He graduated magna cum laude from a small distinguished college in Minnesota, Carleton College. And upon graduation, he worked for about 20 years, mostly in the profit sector and in North Carolina, but not on the Outer Banks. He returned to the Outer Banks in 2011 when he became the executive director of the Dare County Arts Council. And he served in that position for about 9 years. He took the reins of the Outer Banks Community Foundation in 2021, just a few months ago. I think it was last summer. And the Outer Banks Community Foundation of Dare marks its 40th anniversary this year. And Chris and the board are really looking ahead to a challenging future. One of the big challenges is going to be how to embrace the extraordinary growth projected for the Outer Banks in the coming years. The organization needs to work on that and to work on how to build their capacity to meet the coming needs and to face the coming changes. And Chris says that to prepare for the future, the motto of the organization should be do more now. And now to learn about the Community Foundation's vision and goals for the future, please join me in welcoming Chris Sawin.
All right. It's great to see everybody here. I'm very flattered to be invited to address all of you today. I am a fan of your work. I get the League of Women Voters directory every year. As my friend and Arts Council colleague Peggy can attest, we have a couple of copies of that laying around. When I was there, laying around our office all the time. And here at the Community Foundation, where I am right now in Seven Shores, we have a stack of your most recent directory, which we encourage people to take when they visit us, especially in this political climate where voting is such a hot topic. It's really great to see a nonpartisan, fact-based organization helping voters and citizens understand what our community is all about, who our leaders are, and how they serve. So as somewhat of a nonpartisan myself, I've registered independent pretty much my whole life. And have Republican parents and Democratic siblings. It's really, for me, great to see such a fact-based organization doing such great work here on the Outer Banks. So kudos to all of you for that work. I just want to give you maybe a couple minutes of sort of where I came from. When I first got on this call, I had a chance to chat a little bit with Glenda and Laura. My parents are both from Wisconsin. I lived there for the early part of my life. And then when I was 8 years old, my dad took a position as a professor of chemistry at NC State University. And after 3 years, they started looking at the Outer Banks, attracted by a flyer that they got in the mail for a new subdevelopment called Collington Harbor. And they came down for a weekend to look to possibly buy a second home property, a vacation property. What they ended up buying was a hotel. And my dad retired from his career in academia. We all moved down here slowly from 72 to 74. We'd spend every summer here. Back then, you know, nothing happened between Labor Day and Memorial Day. There was no such thing as a shoulder season. So they would shut down the hotel after Labor Day. We'd all go back to Raleigh and have our school year. And then in 1974, they realized it was just too much of a challenge. So we moved down here, and I started 5th grade at Kitty Hawk Elementary School. And it was, you know, a wonderful place to grow up. It still is. You know, when I went off to school, it was always great to be able to say, oh yeah, I'm from the beach. That was definitely a good calling card to have. When I graduated from school, I did what a lot of folks do, and I bounced around from job to job. I worked at Kelly's, Penguin Isle, did a lot of travel. And then when I was about 25 years old, I went to a school to train you to be work in the record industry. It's called Full Sail University, still going strong in Orlando. Was there for a year, met a lot of great folks. And when I came back, I got an internship at a record company called Mammoth Records in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And they, fortunately for me, they were running out of money. And unbeknownst to me, I had a skill that I didn't know, and that was keeping creditors from suing us. I was able to get on the phone with the people we owed money to and assure them that we were going to send them their money soon. And it gave us the opportunity to sell the company or enter into a joint venture with Time Warner in 1992. We spent about 5 years as a record label within the Atlantic Records system. Atlantic Records is legendary record label. You know, some of their great artists are Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles. Our forte was college alternative rock music. In 1997, we bought the company back we bought Time Warner's share of the company back and sold the whole company to the Walt Disney Company. So starting in 1997, I was senior vice president at the Walt Disney Records division. And I had no business being there. I was way too young to have that title, but it did put me in some pretty interesting places. And I'm very fortunate that at a young age, I got to see sort of what corporate America was like behind the scenes. And had I not just stumbled into Mammoth Records office looking for an internship in 1992, I would not have had that experience. After that, I worked for several other music nonprofits, entertainment industry nonprofits in North Carolina. And then as was mentioned in my introduction, I decided in 2011 to work for a company here on the Outer Banks. And the first place that I kind of fell in love with was as a volunteer at Dare County Arts Council. I had never worked in the nonprofit sector before, but it was just wonderful. It was a great marriage of my interest in entertainment and giving something back to the community that I grew up in. At that time, they did not need any artists. What they needed was somebody who could operate a spreadsheet and QuickBooks. So I was the right person at the right time. At that point, there were some financial struggles, mostly because of Hurricane Irene in 2010, I believe, or 2011. Hurricane Irene flooded all of downtown Manio. I think Peggy may have been on the board at that time, certainly one of our senior volunteers, but it was nearly hip-high waters in the Arts Council building in the old courthouse in downtown Manio. And there was 6 months of mold remediation. FEMA money came in to renovate the place. And the board of directors and me and the other employees set about the work of sort of rebuilding the agency. By about 2015, we had retired all of our debt and started renovating the courthouse to become a first-class arts facility in Eastern North Carolina. And I think everybody who's part of that process is really proud of how things have turned out. By about, I think, 2019, I started, I think, a little bit getting so used to the
Good afternoon, Carolina Designs. This is Monica. May I help you?
That I was starting to look for a new challenge. And at the beginning of 2021, my dear friend Lorelei Costa, who at that time was the executive director at the Community Foundation, asked me if I would be one of her recommenders for a job that she applied for in Suffolk, at the Art Center in Suffolk. And of course, I was happy to do it. And at that point, I started talking to her about the possibility that I might apply for this job. There were a lot of candidates, and I was just absolutely thrilled and flattered that they selected me. But I did have a chance to talk to Lorelei this week. If you get a chance, if you find yourself in Suffolk, you should definitely look her up. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead here. We sort of traded jobs. She is the leader of a wonderful arts organization in the Tidewater area, and I'm now in the Community Foundation world. So that's how I got to where I am now. We have a wonderful staff that I would say, of all the accomplishments that Lorelei brought to this organization, putting together a first-rate staff, I would put at the top of the list. When she came on board, 2012, I think the size of the organization was at about an $8 million level. When I got here, it was 25 million. So the growth has been amazing. There's all sorts of systems that were not in place that Lorelei put in place. And I think that more than anything, getting a staff in place that she trained up, and now they're training me how to do my job, really speaks to the sustainability of the organization. We are fortunate to rely on 40 years of institutional experience here, of institutional knowledge that is irreplaceable. There's so much history here. Some of you may know our origin story. The Outer Banks Community Foundation was founded in 1982, and as was mentioned earlier, this is our 40th year. We're gonna, as soon as we can get through COVID, we're hoping to have a few good parties that you could attend. We'd love for you to attend, but we are commemorating our 40th anniversary. It started with David Stick. David Stick, many of you know, celebrated writer, wrote what still is the definitive history of the Outer Banks, helped develop Southern Shores, was the son of Frank Stick, one of the most notable internationally recognized artists to call the Outer Banks home. He called a handful of folks in 1982 and asked them to come to a meeting, and it was kind of a secret meeting. He said to three people: Edward Green, who at that time was the owner of the Christmas shop. He had served as on the Manio Town Council. He had been part of just about every nonprofit push. Absolute legendary civic leader. George Crocker, who at that time owned the Galleon Esplanade and a restaurant by George, and Andy Griffith, who needs no introduction or explanation. And he said, if I invite you to a meeting, would you come? I'm not going to tell you what the meeting's about, but I will tell you who else I invited. And he said, it's, Edward, Andy, and George. And of course, they all said yes. I don't think many people were used to saying no to David Stick. He was absolutely one of the true leaders in the Outer Banks at that time. And Edward had the foresight to know that something big might be afoot, and he arranged to have a photographer there. If you look on our homepage in our office over in the next room, a picture of those four gentlemen at the time that they met to discuss the formation of the Community Foundation is still sort of our most iconic image. They were not the only founders, though. There were three other gentlemen who were there right from the beginning. A gentleman named Jack Adams, who I had a chance to meet this past year, who was at one point the only CPA on the Outer Banks in the 60s. He set up all the financial arrangements. Martin Kellogg was the attorney who helped found the organization, and Ray White, who a lot of you know, was there at the founding as well. And right off the bat, they decided to make the organization a membership organization. And they made membership something very easy to attain. They put together teams of volunteers representing each geographic region, Roanoke Island, Northern Beaches, Hatteras Island, to go out to business owners and say, would you become a member? And I think it was something in the neighborhood of $40 to become a member. And to this day, any person who donates to the Community Foundation is a member and has voting rights within the organization. The purpose was very simple: to meet the unmet needs of the Outer Banks. And for those of you who visited or lived on the Outer Banks in 1982, you know that was the beginning of a dramatic growth spurt, probably similar to the one we're in the midst of right now. I think that we went from about 15,000 residents to about 30 over the course of about a 10-year period. And there was my dad was working in real estate at the time, and a lot of people were selling a lot of real estate. He was working at Monterey Shores and Corolla when Corolla was just starting to be accessible. So I think David and the other founders had the foresight to know that with growth comes change, comes problems, challenges, and so the purpose was very clear: to meet the unmet needs of the Outer Banks. The first ever grant awarded was to Outer Banks Hotline. And that grant was to pay for an 800 number because the number to call into the crisis line at Hotline, which had just started, was a long distance call in Hatteras. So the grant was to pay for an 800 number so that people from Hatteras who were in crisis could call without paying any kind of toll or fee on their credit card. The second award was a scholarship for a student who is going from a local high school to study in higher education. And I think that sort of set the tone. Those two things are still the bread and butter of what we do: grant making to nonprofits to address needs, and scholarships for students in high schools in our area that are going on to study in college. Over the course of the 40 years, we've awarded over $12 million in grants and scholarships. We have 210 funds that have been established by various donors. And the list of organizations that we have funded over that 40-year period is a who's who of the nonprofit world. In addition to those two cornerstones of what we do, grant making and scholarships, we've also developed some other areas where we want to exhibit leadership. I think the most notable recently is disaster relief. We've worked with Dare County, Hyde County, and to a lesser extent, Currituck County, because Corolla is in our service area, for disaster relief for pretty much the entire 40-year period. It was never more noticeable than in 2019 during Hurricane Dorian. And I'll rewind to that in just a second. The other is the other sort of pillar that is part of our DNA is nonprofit support. I think humbly, our goal is to be a leader in the nonprofit world, in the nonprofit sector on the Outer Banks. Not that we call any shots, not that we tell anybody what to do, but we want to be a resource for all nonprofits. We want to know what their mission is. We want to know what their needs are. We want to know what their powers are, what they bring to the community, and we want to provide support at regular intervals. So that's sort of the makeup of what we are trying to accomplish here on a daily basis. Our grant cycles are quarterly, so every quarter, every 3 months, any nonprofit can apply for a grant to us. Our scholarship season is a little more annually, an annual cycle because of the way the school year is. But we have also started developing a relationship with College of the Albemarle. We have 3 new funds that are specifically for COA students who take advantage of the DARE guarantee, where if you graduate from high school in Dare County, you can go to COA for free for your first 2 years of college. These scholarship funds are for students who finish those first 2 years under the DARE guarantee and decide to finish their 3rd and 4th year at a 4-year college, which is a tremendous development for our students, I think. The DARE guarantee is just terrific. I hope that the rest of North Carolina is able to implement and sustain a similar model. I saw a report recently that community college enrollment is gone down during COVID. So there's risk there that this tremendous educational resource is going to take a hit. But you know, we're thrilled to have this working relationship with COA and all of the high schools for those seniors who are going directly to a 4-year school. So I'm just going to switch gears just a second and talk a little bit about Hurricane Dorian. As I mentioned, it is one of the 4 pillars of what we do here, but Dorian was completely different. And for those of you who remember it well and lived through parts of it, for those of us living in northern beaches, we didn't get hit terribly hard, but Hatteras Island and especially Ocracoke were just devastated. I believe it's not hyperbole to say this was one of the Community Foundation's finest moments, certainly one that we're immensely indebted to Lorelei Costa for. She sprung into action. Even before the storms hit, she was working with our board of directors and staff to organize marketing materials, working with the county to set up relief efforts, working with the other nonprofits to help manage disaster relief donations. And it was over the course of, I guess, 2 years, it's still sort of winding down, a $1.5 million effort where we collected donations, small and large, from all over the world and got the money out to people in need in rapid fashion. That was we've got a lot of models for support. Grant making is a model for serving our community. Scholarships is a model for that. This was a very innovative model. It was very much a digital era model where we used media and outreach to reach as many people as we can, to help as many people as we can. And what we learned from that experience allowed us to put together a new program last year called the Trusted Partners Program. Everything we learned about disaster relief went into a new plan so that we could replicate that experience, replicate that service. We have partnered currently with 3 organizations, the Ocracoke Island Relief and Rescue Team, the Cape Hatteras United Methodist Men, and Interfaith Community Outreach, representing Ocracoke Island, Hatteras Island, and Northern Beaches and Corolla. And there's a script, there's a playbook in place so that if we see the next storm, we're already communicating with the counties. We're already communicating with our trusted nonprofit partners. We've got everything in place so that we can be on point from the moment a storm passes. So that is a brand new model that came, to us. Unfortunately, came to us, but I think was a great achievement. Following in that vein, last year, a new model emerged, and it was due to COVID. In a similar fashion, but in a completely different way, the team here mobilized resources through our donors and put $350,000 into our community through a rapid response grant program. And I have experience with this because I applied for a grant when I was at the Arts Council and was awarded a grant during this rapid COVID response period with the Community Foundation. And it helped people in all sorts of ways. In my experience, what we did at the Arts Council was we designed a brand new performance series that was entirely online. It was a live streaming show called the Courthouse Sessions, because every single musician on the Outer Banks had all of their gigs canceled on the same day in March of 2020. It was, but it was just every club owner and every musician, realized there was just not going to be any music for the foreseeable future. So what we were able to do is put something together that helped musicians. The first show we did was with Bill Ray and his family. Bill is a absolutely brilliant music educator and performer. And I don't think I ever had permission to say how much money they raised, but in just an hour-long live stream performance, it was 4 figures, and it was amazing. It continued for about 6 months with great results for all the performers. And then everybody got sick of live streaming, and we went back to real performances. But that was I think almost peanuts compared to some of the other things that happened. YMCA, Mustang Outreach Program, and other organizations got grant money to provide care for kids that were that couldn't go to school and their parents had to work. There were over 20 organizations that received rapid response grants. So what you see is, going from regular grant making, scholarships, Dorian being a great example of a new model for meeting needs in our community. COVID was its own completely different model. And I think that's kind of a message that we're starting, we want to share with our community. If there's anything clear from COVID Dorian and COVID is, we have no idea what's coming at us next. But what we do have is we have versatility, and we have flexibility, and we have this learning of how to react quickly. And as we grow as a community, I think that's going to be as important as the specific things that we do to meet unmet needs. We don't know what the next model for serving our community is, but we know we're ready for it. If we're not ready for it, we know we can learn quickly and adapt. So that's sort of where I found myself as I came on board here in August, was this idea that we're getting more nimble. We've grown now to a mid-sized community foundation in our universe. I get to sit in with other CEOs of community foundations throughout the state, and we're in a really good peer group. We're not a small organization in North Carolina anymore. We're sort of in the middle of the pack, and what we're seeing our brothers and sisters in the community foundation world do throughout the state are models for us as well. There's one person that I've gotten to know who's in I believe it's Yanceyville, and their big issue is there's no daycare in the whole county. I mean, they have just complete lack of resources for daycare. So they're working with the county to buy a building and not only convert it into a daycare, but also a home base for daycare providers who provide childcare out of their homes, office space, shared conference rooms, shared playground. Again, a completely innovative model to a problem that's unique to their area. So, and our problems are going to be unique to us, and hopefully we'll find innovative ways to address them. One of the community foundation colleagues that I've met shared something with us on a group meeting about a month ago that really stuck with me, and we're internalizing it a little bit here. When we talk to our nonprofit partners and the folks who reach out to us for support, this particular woman, I think she worked for the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. She said that in her office, they stopped talking about what people need. They don't ask what the needs are of a nonprofit. They ask what their power is, because they don't want nonprofits to be to appear to be needy. They're not needy people. These are people who are just diving in with both feet to solve problems. So I've started just asking, people, what's your superpower? What are you bringing to the table? Not what your need is, because I think that's something you can discuss in an application. Usually it's more of an idea for solving an issue rather than a need. But for me, I think that's the outlook going forward. And I think, Glenda alluded to the mantra of do more now. I do think that I have had a tendency to put things on a list in my time, in my professional career. And here there's not as much of an emphasis on doing that. Our organization, because it is based on endowments, it's already just configured from the get-go to address the future. Donors who come to us, they set aside money in endowments, in funds, to have money available for the long term. That is really our DNA, what we're made of. So now that we're in this position where we've got this solid foundation to guide us into the future indefinitely, most of these funds are set up to sustain themselves literally indefinitely, financially through investments. Now is the time to think about, what can we do right away? How can we serve our community immediately? How can we serve our nonprofit partners immediately? And in turn, how can we reach out to new donors immediately? We have this tremendous influx of new homeowners, new residents, new citizens, new people who fall in love with the Outer Banks, people who've fallen in love with the Outer Banks decades ago, and they've just reached an age where they can finally move down here. Maybe they are at the end of their careers and are looking to start their next chapter here. Maybe they're in the midst of their careers and they're starting a new business here. But these are people who care about the Outer Banks. These are people who really want to get involved. And I'm sure this is one of the reasons why you are all here and part of your organization, is because you care about the health of our community. And that's another part of let's do this now. My best days are when I'm meeting a bunch of new people and telling them what we do. And it's on some level, it is like sales. My hope is that they contribute. They start their own fund. They start a fund to address cancer, or a scholarship fund, or I don't know, pedestrian safety, whatever the issue that is close to their heart. But I don't have to walk away with that result. I can walk away from any meeting with an existing donor or a new donor, just telling them what we do. At the most, ask them, hey, if there's another natural disaster, can I send you an email and invite you to help? Which is, for me, just such a luxurious position to be in. I do have to be a fundraiser. That is probably 1A or 1B in my job description, is to raise money. But I don't have to be a used car salesman. I can explain our history. I can explain who we are, what we do, the impact we intend to have, the issues that we're starting to address. And if it resonates with someone immediately, that's great. But usually, I think if you do care about our community, it will resonate eventually, and you'll find a way to join us in some way. With our fundraising in mind, we do try and stay out of everybody's way. We do not have galas or pig pickings or concert fundraisers. We do one annual appeal every year. It's a mail piece, and that allows us to grow, sustain ourselves as an organization, and continue to reach out to people to establish their own funds. So that's nice to because we do serve the nonprofit community. Last thing we want to do is have a big fundraising party on the same weekend as Beach Food Pantry or ICO. We don't want to compete, but we do need to sustain ourselves. So I'm going to close with just one last piece of my experience here so far, and that comes from an offsite meeting that our board of directors had in November. Like most organizations of our kind, we regularly have a strategic plan initiative that will outline what our priorities are over the next 3-5 years. I think most nonprofits have some sort of visioning procedure where they try to look farther in the future than next month's rent. When we got together, it was a tremendous 2-day experience. Our board came prepared and ready to share their best ideas. And what we came away with was not leaving the road we're on, staying true to our mission. We're not going to stop doing all the things we do. We certainly are going to try and strive for excellence in everything that we've established our reputation on. Again, grant making, scholarships, disaster relief, and nonprofit support. But what we want to do is be able to have a new lane. We want to have, as a growing organization in a growing area, we want to start mapping out what else we can do. And I think that it came down to a couple keywords that we walked away with. One of them was coalition building, bringing different folks together to look at larger endemic problems. Convening is another way of putting that. Another notion was being comfortable and eager to be a small player in a big idea. Our history has been we are sometimes the lead funder of an idea. And I'll give you an easy one. We just provided grant money to St. John's Church in Avon to buy a new oven, a $2,400 grant. And they feed so many people who it's not quite a food pantry or a cafeteria, but I think every week they invite the community and they feed a lot of people who need support, and they needed a new oven, and so we're going to fund that. As an example of kind of what we've done for the most part over the last 4 years. Playing in our own sandbox is the phrase I like to use. But we want to be more comfortable being one of the players in bigger ideas, dealing with bigger issues. On large scale problems like my colleague in Central North Carolina who's working on a big childcare initiative. Typically, business and government are the two main sectors addressing every problem, but almost invariably the nonprofit sector is the strong third partner. Sometimes they're taking more of a lead financially. Sometimes they're taking the lead in organizing a solution to a problem. But I think everybody recognized that the issues that we see on the horizon are not things that we can address by ourselves. Housing, number one. We don't need anybody. We don't need a special meeting to tell us that that's an issue. Workforce housing is a huge issue. Addiction. We lost another young person this weekend to an overdose. Last fall, I think we lost 4 in one weekend. It's not an issue that's going away, and it's not an issue that we can solve ourselves. Aging and the issues that people work through as they age. That is another big issue that's going to never go away, but we can be part of. So how we're addressing that in real time today, 2022 for us is internally is the year of learning. We're trying to reach out to everybody we can to talk about any issue that we can learn about. Our goal is to spend 2022 speaking with nonprofits, civic leaders, asking them, what do you see as the main issues? Who knows, with the growth of this area, crime might be something that didn't exist before that maybe pops up as one of the issues that our community faces. But what we don't want to do is go into any situation thinking that we are here and, you know, everybody stand back, we've arrived, we're gonna take charge now, because we know that on all these issues, there are nonprofits, concerned individuals, donors who have been addressing these issues for years. I first started hearing about housing a decade ago when through the Chamber of Commerce. I just saw a nice comment pop up from Gail Sinesso. She and I have collaborated on projects involving folks with dementia for the better part of a decade. We don't come into any of these conversations with anything other than humility, with our hat in our hand, asking how we can learn. So that's what this year is all about for us. It's meeting as many people as possible, learning as much as we can, and then maybe ideas emerge this year. Certainly, we plan on things emerging in 2023, but we want to try and bring people together in some way to address some of the bigger issues that are going on. Again, we're not leaving the road we're on. We're going to continue to do all the things we do, and we hope to do them with a high degree of excellence. But as a organization who's reached a certain plateau that puts us in the middle of the pack statewide, and certainly a regional leader, if you look at the counties around us, we are so fortunate to have the wealth we have in this county. That's where our focus is currently. I don't know if I really addressed everything I was hoping to. I've got all these talking points in front of me, but I think that might be a good place to turn it back over to Laura and Glenda, because I do know that there was a Q&A section that you had planned, and I'd be happy to address any questions folks have or chat with you about anything.
Thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate that. Some of y'all should mute yourselves or unmute yourselves. And I will turn it over to Glenda here to, we have several questions that have popped up in the chat. So if you have a question, either go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll try to go through the questions that came to people's minds. Glenda?
Okay. Well, the first one, Chris referred to the fact that they started 40 years ago in 1982, and someone says, how was 1982 40 years ago? I think you meant 72. Is that right?
No, we were founded in 1982.
70.
Yeah, that's 40 years ago.
Years. Yeah.
92. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then I don't know what this question was about, but anyway.
It might have been, holy cow, has it really been 40 years?
Yeah, it could be.
That's
Okay.
exactly what it was.
Oh, okay.
I'm much too young to have 40 years ago be 1982.
Okay, I get it. Okay, I'll do the next question. On the COA program, can you take a trade, or is it just for classes toward a degree?
Well, so I don't know if I know the answer to that question yet. In fact, Nandy Stewart, who is our scholarship administrator, is literally driving to COA for a meeting to talk about these. But I think that the process is that a student applies for a scholarship, and if it's awarded, we send money directly to the college to pay for blank. And I think it starts with tuition, but it could include other things that go into the cost of a college education. I know that if you look at some of the four-year scholarships that we have provided, the money goes to the college, and then they will decide what it applies to, whether it's tuition, fees. There are a lot of things that go into an invoice from a college for a student to be there. But I can't say I know exactly the answer to that question yet, because we're still working out some of the details.
So an applicant for a scholarship through your organization then would need to tell you what college they're planning to go to. I mean, they would need to know in advance where they're going to go to school.
Well, the first part of the question was specific about COA, which is a new scholarship model for us. But if you just dial back to what we're traditionally known for, and that is scholarship awards to senior high school students graduating and going to college, they don't actually have to know where they're going. We have an application process, which this year is going to open on February 7th, about the same time that some of the other school scholarships. There's a lot of scholarship programs that the high schools administer themselves. I think the Mount Olivet has a ton of scholarships. I think that if I'm not mistaken, even the Outer Banks Beach Buggy Association has a scholarship at First Flight High School. But kids will apply on our site digitally, and their names, their academic information. We do ask where they intend to go to school, where have you applied, and what's your first choice. And we ask a series of other questions that you would expect on a college application or a scholarship application. What are you most proud of? What are your accomplishments? And then we will award the scholarship to them typically prior to knowing exactly where they go. In the period of time between the award ceremony at the high school, where we announce the winner, to the time that we send the check, we communicate with that student and say, which college do you want this payment to go to?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we prepare letters to each one of the colleges on behalf of the students that we've awarded. We send checks to them with a letter explaining exactly what the check can be used for.
Good.
I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. And Laura, do you want to take the next question or two? Laura?
Sure, if my phone doesn't ring again.
We
We have a question from Judy Lotus, and her question is, what organization is your biggest competitor for donations?
Well, it is again, I mentioned that I feel like I'm in this really enviable position to not have to compete too much. Most nonprofits on the Outer Banks, probably globally, are seeking donors to pay the costs of running their organization or the programs they run in the near term, in the immediate future. I remember we'd get donation checks to the Arts Council, and we'd use that money the next month to pay for salaries and rent and programs and stuff. The nature of community foundations throughout the country is more about endowed funds. So I'll give you an example. Diane Baum St. Clair, who many of you know of, when she passed away, she left in her last will and testament a gift of in excess of $1 million. That money was not spent. That money was invested in an endowment. And every year, 5%, which is roughly equivalent to the average growth, maybe a little less, the average growth in that investment is spent. So every year, there's $50,000 available for grants. So when we go out and talk to donors, if they want to help somebody with an immediate need, we're probably not their best choice. If they want to establish a legacy, and I think that's an important word, if they want to establish a legacy of giving, what we do is encourage them to set up a fund, an endowed fund, and grow it over time so that, again, I hate to use the word forever, but for as far into the future as we can see, the principal is still there, and the only thing that is spent is the earnings. So it lasts year after year after year. And that's why when I say we've gone from 8 million to 25 million, that's the basis. That's the principal amount of those investments. Now, it's not that we don't compete. I would say the one organization that we are most confused with is the Outer Banks Relief Foundation. The names of our organizations are off by one word. So there is some confusion, I think, among donors, but they're one of our great partners. I have already had one conversation with their executive director, Patty McKenna, this week. I'm probably going to talk to her 3 or 4 more times before she comes back from vacation at the end of the month. So I think and they've asked for and received grants from the Community Foundation. But I think if you talk about competition for attention and donor dollars, I might list the Relief Foundation as one of those organizations that has such a storied history, such high quality, that they're in the same category.
Oh,
Excuse me.
bless you.
Sorry. Thank you. I felt that
Well,
one coming up.
Thank you, Chris, for that. Outer Banks Relief Foundation. Patty is one of our members, I believe. Marcy Reese has a question. Are donations growing with the population?
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned that we had we do an annual appeal letter. The amount of new funding we get from that.
Bless you.
I muted that time. The amount of donations that we get from that annual appeal, I believe, probably have tripled since 2010. And I think that's a result of our growth. Last year, we had 16 new funds established. Some were scholarship funds. I mentioned the ones for COA. Some were new funds for health and human services, arts and culture. That was a record. So in 2021, we probably had more new funds established than ever before. It is not, 2021 was not the high point for donations. That was clearly 2019 with Dorian. We don't necessarily want to top that record because it came with a natural disaster. But that was the high water mark for just cash in. But one thing it's important to point out, our organization is sustained by a 1% fee on all of our funds. So every year there's a statement, and I'm going to sneeze again. Sorry. A little dusty in here. But for disaster relief, not a penny goes out. Every dollar that comes in the door for disaster relief goes out the door as quickly as possible without a single penny being peeled off for any purpose other than disaster relief. So that was $1.5 million in and $1.5 million out in very rapid order.
Great. Okay. Let's see. I'll take the next one. Judy Lotus, our co-president, says, is there a welcome packet given to new residents with info about your organization and the League of Women Voters, etc.? We'll help. And Judy is an expert at putting together publicity and public relations information.
Well, I will find a way to take you up on that offer. We have not yet gotten to that yet, but it's something we've talked about. In order to do that, I think that it's a doable thing. It's not pie in the sky. The sale of property is public information. It's actually fairly easily accessed. So if you were to, on a monthly basis, be able to download the information of the changes in property ownership, you could easily put that together, and easily in terms of the steps you'd take. Not so easy in terms of the time it would take, the amount of effort it would take, the number of man hours it would take. That's something we have not yet gotten to, but we do have 2 experiments that we did since I got here, and they both have been great. One is there's a member of our board a woman named Jean Louise Dixon from Avon. You may know her as Scout Dixon. Just a tremendous, it has her own nonprofit, the Hatteras Education Foundation, I believe, raised tons of money. She's just a super, super person. She does real estate transactions as an attorney on Hatteras Island. She and her husband, David, who's also an attorney in her practice, just opened an office in Nags Head. And every time they do a closing, she sends out a letter on our behalf saying, thank you for trusting me as your attorney on this transaction. I believe in the Outer Banks Community Foundation and as a board member, let me tell you about it. And more often than not, that has yielded a donation. But more important than the donation is a new contact, a new person who obviously cares about the Outer Banks. You don't drop hundreds of thousands of dollars on a property here if you don't love the place. So that's a model for us going forward, figuring out how to scale that up. You can't do it by reaching out to every attorney on the Outer Banks because, well, you know, truthfully, very few of them probably take you up on the offer. They probably have their own causes that they'd be interested in, or it'd just be an extra thing that they'd have to do that they might not be interested in doing. But like I said, the information is available. Another thing we did was typically our annual appeal letter goes out to people we know. And this year we decided, let's just take a chance. We downloaded the entire property list. I think it's 32,000 lines in a spreadsheet from Dare County GIS. We sorted it to include the property owners whose houses were valued at $600,000 or more. And we sent them a letter. And it worked. I mean, I think that probably about 25% of our donations this year came from people we'd never known before, who just came from the tax list. And all we did was send them a letter and told us who we were. So there's a model, and I'll speak directly to you, Judy, since you asked the question. Yeah. There's a model for pulling something like this off, and if you'd like to explore it, let's follow up afterwards, because I think I agree. It's as important for me personally to get your directory in people's hands as it is to get a letter from me.
Yeah, we're just about to come out with a new one.
I see Susan Merrill has a comment on this. She says, I see it as being a big expense to send a package to new buyers. I think it's a great idea. And then she says, and we meaning the league, have already been told we are, quote, too political, unquote, for funding. So might they decide we are too political to be part of an outreach that includes them?
Well,
I don't know.
I think that might be a question, Susan, for you to discuss internally with your organization, but I don't perceive you as being too political. I mean, and the directory, by God, that's not partisan in any way. I mean, it's just a big bolt of information. So the cost, though, it's not insignificant. Y'all probably get North Beach Sun in the mail, and that's because the Baldwin family sends to the whole list. They also take I think every time they do an issue, or at least once a year, they update the list, and they do a bulk mail of their magazine to the whole list. And it's an expense, but they make up for it by the fact that they can tell their advertisers, we're going to send it every address in Dare County. As a nonprofit, you will get reduced bulk mail rates. I think the weight of the directory would send you into a higher cost per unit category. But I would think that if you were to send to the whole list, I think the bulk rate now is about 20 cents a letter, and letters are not a directory, they're much lighter. But you could at least on an annual basis send out a letter that says, you know, here's a link to the online version of the directory, or here's a email address, let us know and we'll mail you a copy. Or but a mass communications are so much easier now. Yeah. That if you've got an idea like that, it wouldn't take you long to find the right people to make it happen. And I'll put a plug in for Adam and Kathy Baldwin at North Beach Sun. They really know how to work they've also got Access Design, which is a communications company. And they could certainly help you strategize and let you know what it would cost to do something like that.
Good.
Thank you for that answer. Glenda, I'll read your question that you put out there in the chat.
Okay.
Here's from our own Glenda. What are the major criteria for evaluating performance of the grantees regarding their use of the Community Foundation Awards?
I'd have to say, I know a lot of the awards, obviously, when you, for the grant you gave for the ovens, you just go take a look at the ovens and see what they got and maybe try them out. But I'm thinking like the things like scholarships. Do you do any kind of follow up to see, you know, how the recipient did, or if they're still in college, or, you know, what are your thoughts on how you check up on the performance of the grantees?
Well, we could actually do a better job, and we've talked about that. Not so much for checking up on people to make sure they did what they say they were going to do, which is on some level a little bit too controlling, untrusting. I don't think that's our goal. It's more to be able to tell the story,
Right.
tell an inspirational story. And we've talked about that a lot since I got here. How do you reach out to some of these scholarship recipients and tell their story? Because I've met some of them. Oh gosh, I wonder if I can. It'd be too complicated to share my screen. But if you, hopefully, some of you are on our mailing list, and you'll get an invitation to our annual meeting, which will be virtual on Zoom next month. But one of our scholarship recipients is a woman named Katie Spoor. Katie is a graduate of First Flight High School. She went to North Carolina State University to study graphic design, and she now is a graphic designer in Brooklyn, New York, for a company that makes, it's a real innovative sort of startup company that makes personal care products. And I've forgotten the name of it, but she's just this delightful 23, 24-year-old woman who does amazing artwork. And you'll see some of her artwork in Sea Green Gallery. She's got a lot of prints there. I just fell in love with her work. And when we were looking for a designer to do our branding for our 40th anniversary, I threw out her name. She sent us some mock-ups, and it's brilliant. So I think that's and we're going to talk about her throughout the year about, you know, as part of our marketing campaign for the 40th year. Like, this is the result. When you help a kid get to where they need to go, they turn into great, talented professionals. The same is true sort of on the grant side. Many of you know Bob Mueller, who was the director before I started. He filled in between Lorelei and me for about 6 months, and he's been on the board here, and former mayor of Nags Head. Bob asked the question while he was here, you know, that grant we gave you for that van in 2005, is it still working? You know, I mean, asking those follow-up questions, it would be good information to have, but certainly not something we need to check up on people. But just one more aspect to the answer to your question. On our grants page on our website, there is 6 priority criteria that we look at for grant making. How much of our community will you serve? If you have a grant proposal and it's going to benefit 10 people, you're probably going to score less than a grant proposal that's going to benefit 5,000 people. Is it innovative? It's not a requirement, but it helps. If you have an innovative idea, like for instance, the stove in Avon, there's nothing innovative about a stove. That technology was implemented a long time ago. But that is one of the criteria. If you have something that's completely innovative, that's going to score you higher marks. One of the most important ones is, are you bringing along other partners? If you have an application that just benefits your organization, nothing else, yay, it might be a winning application on its merits, but it's going to be stronger if you bring along partners. In a lot of cases, that's other funders. We definitely look differently at a proposal for say $20,000 if you've already lined up the first $10,000. That makes it a more viable application. But those criteria are those are 3 of the 6. One of the new ones though that we're talking about possibly implementing this year is maybe not a requirement, but at least ask the question on your application. What is your organization's? Tell us about your organization's efforts towards diversity and inclusion. There's not necessarily a right answer or a wrong answer to that, but we do want to know, and we want to get people used to the idea that they have to answer that question. Most national grants, certainly almost every state grant that I've applied to, they ask that question, and you should have an answer for that. And it's something that I think we want to get in the practice of asking people as well. You're not going to be graded or judged on it, but we do want to know, have you thought about that? Have you thought about how to serve people from marginalized communities, whether that's based on ethnicity, income level, gender identity, you name it. So sorry for the long answer. That was a really long answer.
No, we appreciate it. We have a couple of people that are having to sign off because they're leaving. We'll give it a couple of more minutes in case anybody has a quick question that they want to add in. And on behalf of the league, Chris, that you had a wonderful participation. We got more people than we had normally get on little Zooms. So it's such an important aspect of the community, what you do, and the history that you provided us really gives us some good insight to things. Anybody else have any last thoughts? And I'll pass it back over to Glenda.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you personally, Chris, for doing this, for filling us in on the direction that you and the Community Foundation are headed. I know that you mentioned that working to build coalitions is an important thing to work on for the next few years. And there are going to be challenges and changes coming, and we wish you all the luck in the world. I want to say a word or two about upcoming activities. Our next league luncheon is going to be on Friday, February 11th. And it's either going to be at a local restaurant, or we may have to go Zoom depending upon the COVID risk. But it's going to be a good program. Our health chairperson, Courtney Gallup, has put together a program, and the topic is the community care clinic of the Outer Banks. So we hope you can join us for that. And now I wondered if Laura or Judy would have anything that they'd like to say about other upcoming activities or ongoing activities. Laura or Judy?
Well, we're very excited to be sponsoring with the League of Women Voters of North Carolina a fabulous documentary film about a civil rights movement here in North Carolina that was just incredible. And you'll be hearing about that very soon. What else is, and I'm excited about, it'll happen sometime in May, where Judge Linda is arranging to take us all to the courthouse in Manteo to get a lesson on the judiciary system right in the courthouse, which should be great.
Thank you, Judy.
Yes, and we did have another question in the chat that Chris answered. Gail had asked about will y'all be having the annual meeting, and he said it'll be on Zoom on February 22nd, and there's a registration page on their website. So I didn't put the website in the chat, but y'all can get to that easy enough. And one other event that we're having, what we call a public program, will be January 20th. And George Bonner of the Coastal Studies Institute is going to be giving us a presentation or a discussion on alternative energy. So that's one thing coming up very shortly. And the league board meeting will be happening soon, and all of our members are invited to attend that. So thank you so much, Chris. It's a wonderful opportunity that you have given us for us to learn about your fabulous organization, and just like the previous Arts Council, everything you did there. So we all know and love you, and we appreciate the community involvement that you've had your entire life, and the wonderful work that your organization does. And thank you all. For everyone, we did record this, and with some help from some friends, we'll get it on YouTube eventually, and you can access it on our brand new website that we are so excited for. The league has just launched a brand new website that Susan Pfaff and Jessica Lausa have been our webmasters and have done a terrific job on that. So thank you, Chris. Good luck for the future, and I'm sure we'll have many interactions as we move forward. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you
Great
all for
presentation.
coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.